Hey guys, so I'm filming a video about how I did research for Valor specifically, and I'm at my father's house right now, which is why the background is different, but this should be the only video here because tomorrow I am moving into college, which is so much work, but it'll be great, and I will set up a filming area there, and I think I'm gonna do a desk writing tour when I get there because that's where I'll be writing primarily. So please excuse the visuals and the lighting here. I don't have much, but I'm going to talk to you about how I specifically did research for my historical fiction novel, Valor. If you don't know anything about Valor, if you're new here, then I will link my work in progress tag that I did with Valor down below, so go watch that. I tell you a little bit about my novel and things going on in it, but basically it's a historical fiction novel about Vikings and medieval Scandinavia, so I had to do a lot of research for it. I've got 8 tips for you on how I personally did it, as well as I'm going to show you some of the books that I used. So if you wanted to go get them, I don't know, maybe you're writing a Scandinavian historical fiction. So these are some of the ones that I used for research, also some general tips on how to do research for any historical fiction novel. My number 1 tip is, if you can do this, obviously not everybody can, but if you can, take a class on it. I have taken the early Middle Ages, the high Middle Ages, medieval literature. There's another one that I took too. I've taken many classes that revolve around Valor, and they really helped me not only dive into the history and the culture of what I'm studying, but learn it in a way that's accessible to me, whereas when you're teaching it to yourself, when you're reading something or looking online, it's not always as easy as it is when there's somebody who does it for a living who can explain it to you in a really user-friendly way. So I always recommend taking a class on it if you can. There are tons of sites where you can take online classes. I'm sure you guys have all heard of them from other YouTubers and social media people. They're always being sponsored by different sites where you can take online classes, so definitely try and see if you can take a class on whatever era of history you are looking to write your novel in, because that's a great resource. My tip number 2 is look at books that are from college presses. Most of the books that I used for Valor were from college presses, and this is just a little tip because you know that whoever did the research and whoever's publishing the research knew what they were talking about and wouldn't have published it if it wasn't accurate. So it's kind of hard when you live in, especially in the 2000s, where you have so much information at your fingertips to know what's accurate, what's good, and what's not. So looking for university presses is always a great tip. This is one of the books that I used. It's called The Age of the Vikings by Anders Winroth, maybe? And this was published by Princeton. So you know that they obviously did their research and that the university picked it up is a good sign that the information in here is fairly accurate. Tip number 3 is look for books by reputable authors. Now, if you can't find a book by a university that you know would double check whatever's going on, even if you don't recognize the person's name, you can always look for a book that's by a historian. Read the author bios on any of the books that you're getting and see if they have a degree in history or if they've done work in it, research in it, if they're an archaeologist. All of those are good trigger words. You want to pick that up because you know that they know what they're talking about and are going to give you some accurate information. Tip number 4 is reference books with a wide variety of information. These books that I'm talking about, you're not necessarily going to sit down and completely read. They're a little bit bigger, they're a little bit bulkier, but they split things up into smaller sections where you can use them almost as a dictionary or a physical internet and look up the key things that you want to find. One of those books that I used was A History of the Vikings by Gwen Jones. This is also published by University Press. This is published by Oxford University Press, so you do know that she did her research, but in almost every book you can go to the back and there is an index. And what the index does is splits everything up by keywords. So When you're looking to research something, but you don't necessarily want to read a whole book where it's not 200 pages and you can read it in a night, you pick up one of these and you can look for the exact topic that you're trying to figure out. So if you were looking for Harold Fairhair, which was a king, a Scandinavian king, you can look up his name and it will give you a million different page numbers of where he was mentioned, as well as what was mentioned about him. So if you were looking for, and this is from the book that I just showed you, if you were looking for his glorious reign and progeny revealed to his mother in a dream, that's on page 86. And the index is a great way to find that. These books, I did not read this cover to cover, but when I was looking to research some things for Valor, if I wanted to mention something specific, I could look it up in the index here and flip to that page, read that page, and get the information that I needed pretty quickly and know that it was accurate. Tip number 5 is to use the bibliography in the back of books to find other resources. Now, if you can only find one book or 2 books and you're really looking for more, you went through those and it's not giving you what you want, you can always look in the back of those 2 books, and I would say if they're legitimate sources, they will have a select bibliography. I don't know if you can see that, but this is the bibliography for this book, and it lists all of the sources that this author used to write this book. So you can go back there and Google those resources, see which ones you feel like would be most reader friendly or user accessible, and go pick those up, because those will definitely help you find more research material. Tip number 6 is to use the internet cautiously. Everybody uses the internet. I used it for Valor, and I've used it even for history assignments in school. You need it. It's such a useful tool, and it's at our fingertips 24/7, so how could we stop ourselves from using it at all? Now, I would say use the internet very cautiously. A good way to use the internet is to look up something that's general, read the general thing about it, read the Wikipedia page or whatever, and then write down the more specific things that you then want to go research in your research books or other things like that. You can also always look for articles, like I said, published by professors or people that have a degree in history or in archaeology. Those are the people that you kind of want to look for when you're looking at the author of different articles, and there's tons of things online. There are tons of dissertations and things like that available, so try to steer away from Wikipedia pages or people's blogs when you're looking for accurate historical information. Tip number 7 is look for books with pictures. Now, I know this sounds kind of dumb, and you want to say to me, you're not preschoolers. I totally get that. I'm not gonna lie. When you see people doing research with books with pictures in them, they kind of seem like idiots. I get it, totally get it, but sometimes there are things that you read about, tons of things for me with the metalwork and the weapons. I've read about it, I've looked up books about it, and I know semi how it works, but I cannot picture it accurately enough to describe it in Valor. So that's when a picture book comes in great handy, and you can look and see pictures of actual artifacts and things like that that they have, that they can offer to show you, because these are things that, again, you might not even necessarily know that you're trying to look that up. If that makes any sense, it's very difficult to accurately search for something when you don't really know what to search for. You don't have the words to put it in to words, if that makes any sense. So you can get a picture book and see all of these different artifacts and things like that that we have pictures of, and they're all together for you, so you don't need to do individual searches online. And this book that I'm showing you from is the Penguin Historical Atlas of the Vikings. So I've used this a lot for Valor. I also have this big book that I've used for Valor, and this one has tons of landscape pictures, so when I'm trying to describe the setting and things like that, this was a great book to help me. And tip number 8, I would say the most important tip that I can give you, the tip that's helped me out by far the most, is read primary sources. that sounds daunting. It always sounds daunting, and I feel like some people think I'm a hypocrite because I am a history major. It's what I do. I was taught how to read primary sources, but there are tons of things online that can make primary sources accessible to you, and if you can't really get anything out of the primary source, then look for another one. There are tons out there, even for things as obscure as Vikings. So I definitely turned towards primary sources for much of my information when I was writing Valor. When you're looking at Scandinavian primary sources, a lot of them were written in Iceland by Icelanders and their sagas. So these are two of the sagas that I have on my hands. And they're not that hard to access. You can pretty much find them anywhere. I definitely used the Prose Edda by Snorri Sturluson. You can see that I've got tons of tabs in it everywhere, and I move them around for different things that I need to reference. But when you're looking at primary sources, you know, that's what the historians are looking at. That's as accurate as information you can get. So I definitely recommend finding primary sources from your time period. That's something that you can definitely use the internet for when you're just looking up your time period. Look up what they say was written in that time, what Wikipedia says was published during that time, and pick some of that stuff up and read it, because you're gonna get descriptions of things that historians can tell you about, but these are the actual words of the people that lived in that time. So specific things that I used primary sources for, especially with Valor, is the religion system, the gods, the culture. It's always important to look at how characters in the books speak to each other and how their relationships work, what they say their clothes looked like or their hair looked like. All of that stuff you can find first-hand knowledge of in primary sources. So they are 100% the most useful historical tool that you can have. So those are my 8 tips for how to find historical information and do historical research that's accurate for your historical fiction novel or short story or whatever. Mine happened to be a novel, and I showed you some of the specific books that I used when I was writing Valor. I hope this was helpful for some of you. I know that the historical fiction community on the internet is kind of small. We're kind of niche, but I'm hoping more of you will come to me and come watch my videos, because I love talking to other people that like history. We're kind of a small group, especially with all the STEM people, but history is great. I love it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please comment down below if you're writing a historical fiction novel, or if you're not, comment down below what's your favorite historical era to study or that you've studied in school, what you like. I would love to hear it. I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so please subscribe if you like what I said. I post writing videos, editing videos, and everything in between. As always, I'm always open for your suggestions for video ideas if you want to leave those down below, if there's something you specifically want to see from me, and I will see you guys next week. Bye!